there's the idea that we're doing amazing healing. Okay, well, ultimately, the biggest obstacle to healing is the ego. Ultimately, there's other things I could say, but the ego ultimately is the biggest problem. So if healing techniques do not include removing the ego, then what you have is an ego healing technique disguised as wonderful. You see what I'm saying? If you don't hear God as part of the technique, and some people are like, well, I don't use the word God. Why? I'm just curious. Why? It sounds like you might have an issue you need to heal yourself, you know? I mean this is the ultimate humility. How can we be so arrogant to say, I'm going to heal you, but I don't really bring God into it? It can't be healing if it doesn't mean moving something out and putting something in. Bringing out some aspect of the ego, some aspect of woundedness or trauma or whatever it is, but replacing it with something more. So what have you replaced it with? Well, I'm an amazing healer, so I replaced it with my energetics. Well, I don't know. Are you perfected and Christed yet? No. You know? So why would I want to have your energy? Let's just get God. Well, I don't really know how to do that. See? So we have to think about this. Even if you're doing acupuncture, you can bring God into what you do through the needles. You do Reiki. I know it's called Reiki, but you bring God into it. Universal life, okay, great. But in your mind as a healer, bring God into it. If you're doing any form of hands-on healing, massage, chiropractic, even parenting, bring God into everything we do. That's the only way. And it's kind of strange to say that at times because some people think of it as old-fashioned to use that term. But I'm not being religious on you. I'm just saying there's a creator and a created. The created have learned to screw things up. So we need to call on the creator that knows how to fix it. The Divine Mother, the Holy Spirit of God, or whatever you want to call it. When I say whatever you want to call it, I mean still a God name. The more we drift from, into being apprehensive, well, I'll have less clients if I use the word God. They like me to use starry light systems instead. Really? You think stars heal you? Do then go and pick up a chunk of a meteor and put it on your body or whatever and breathe this energy in and see when you're done with that process if you're still a human being. See if you still have issues. I'll bet you are. I'll bet you still have compulsions and addictions and low self-esteem. No, the meteor took it all away. Meteors can't. The dust of the earth, the dirt of the earth isn't going to do it. Not on some organic lawn or whatever you want to chew on. None of these things can heal you. And I'm not saying don't use them. I'm saying if you're not willing to bring the lower self, the wounded self to the altar to release it, these things can't fix you. And even if they could, there's no room to get in because we're filled with stuff, issues. So we got to bring our stuff to the process. If you say, I'm not going to bring anything to the altar because all my stuff's in the past, I'm not going to think about it, I just want to have healing now. The healing can't get in because you're already filled. The story, your cup, if you don't empty your cup, it can't be filled. How are we going to pour anything new in when you're already filled? Just like we say about the mind. Got to open the mind. No way greater than open the mind than to pour out the stuff that's filling the mind. If we were to beam into the earth, I've said this a couple of different times, but if we were to beam into the earth right now, fresh from spirit, like having had no incarnations or anything, you would beam in and you would just be this glorious being of light, probably with little or no form, but let's say you took on form and you start to crystallize, because that's really what it can be like and once was like. Before mankind got so dense, we had the ability to sort of immaculately conceive. We could just beam into the earth plane. That's how many waves of us came in originally. But let's say one of us just beams in right now, right here onto this stage. We beam in, we would be this being of light, radiant energy system, chakras open, just glowing, much like beings some of you have seen in visualizations or in visitations. It could be like an angel or whatever, a light being, ascended master. Just this great radiant being of light. However, what happens on earth is One physical trauma after another, one emotional trauma after another. Somebody says this, they kick you, they do this, they do that. The hurts, they start to weigh on us. And the more they happen, the more we start to believe in them. Even if you're radiantly brilliant, the more it happens, the more it starts to weigh on us. And you start to get to know a certain law called gravity. Not levity, but gravity, meaning we start to take it serious. Well, even if we say, well, I don't really believe in what they're saying or doing to me, I still have to ask myself, why are they like that? Why are people so rude? Why are they so mean? And this is a metaphor, but all of us have had those questions. We've been children going, what is going on? I moved to Sedona and met some mean people while I was living here and said, what's with these people? It happens to us. No matter where you're coming from, the weight of the world, man, it just kind of keeps putting itself on our shoulders. And wherever those traumas, no matter what those traumas are, they're going to find a place to rest. A joint, an organ, a gland, it's going to go somewhere. Even if you got lucky the first few times trauma comes to visit and you just hold your center and it just passes through because it has no place to land. But as soon as we wonder what that was, doubt our ability to fend it off, it starts sticking. And as soon as one of them sticks, like a twig in a little stream, one twig can snag another, and pretty soon it becomes a dam. And all of a sudden we realize things aren't flowing through me the way they once did. We know this happens from children to adulthood. My God, the seriousness. Where's the playfulness? Where's the lightness? It's because people don't just age biologically, anatomically. They age mentally. I just don't laugh as much. There's a guy I know, somebody was asking about him the other day, something about him they had asked me, and I said, what's interesting? That person used to laugh and laugh. And they were just the humor all the way. I remember them since I met them in elementary school through high school. Something happened because I would only see them maybe every few years. One of the times, next time I see them, all of a sudden, very old and very serious. No more laughter. And I thought about it and I remember, I remember one thing that it might have been his sister OD'd, and passed away. And I have a feeling that was the beginning of a big piece damming up the flow. It can be different things for different people. And some people come in carrying more stuff, of course. But I'm saying even if you come in pure and simple and beautiful, stuff on this planet tries to get you. The weight of the world on your shoulders. It's part of the game here with something's going to just try to snag and then it starts building up. Because that's the world that we're creating when we're in our ego. A good example of this, is just the concept of love. It is possible for us to be really loving people. I've shared this recently, but to be loving. I mean, just imagine if we had no garbage of the past. We wouldn't be noticing colors and all that stuff on skin, but also to be able to go back to where we could hug and kiss each other and say hello and not have agendas and issues. Instead of having traumas of people in the past that ever gave me a hug and then they wanted me to, that we marry them and then they hurt our feelings. Now we don't hug as much. We don't kiss as much. We don't, all of a sudden affection starts to die. But it's not just affection, it's also trust starts to die. So all of a sudden it's, if you're too affectionate, you could look either like you have agendas, or it could be like maybe you're codependent. If you love me too much or like me too much, I'm a guru. If you like Unity of Sedona too much, it's a cult. What I'm saying is, even our trying to love things, the world loves to shame these things. Why? I'm talking about the world that's made up by the ego. Because it wants nothing good left. You follow what I'm saying? It wants shamed everything. It wants everything to have a darkness to it so that it can ensure that people come in and die as soon as possible, emotionally. And I won't keep you all bummed, but just hang in there with me. And what's strange is science, medical science is starting to come to understand this. They're saying more and more, they're starting to say that the world you see is not actually the world that's there. Our brain, they're coming to understand our brain already has programs and tends to see only what it expects to see. So if you've experienced trauma or distrust or betrayals, it almost can't see anything that isn't a flavor like that. It's like it's not in you. And that's why it's so difficult to go to a healer and just be able to say, I trust. But damn, the healers need to have some integrity. So it's all so tricky. Because they could sneeze and you could go, oh my God, they're a terrible healer. Because that's how quickly we go. Wherever we go, it's already preordained. And the reason our brain is programmed, I'm saying the brain because that's medical science is saying, we're realizing the brain is already programmed to see only certain things that have already been programmed into it. Now, the reason the brain, which they're not going to believe in the mind, they think the brain is it, often in science. But the reason the brain thinks this way is because the mind does. What is the mind? Do you think I mean your conscious intellectual self? No, your soul. Your brain expects to see things because your soul believes that's it. If your soul has been hurt, if you've been hurt in the heart, that's where the programs and belief systems really lie. You have experiences, but your experiences are never just random. Your experiences are coming from patterns. Behind your experiences are patterns. Behind the patterns are core issues. Behind the core issues, creating the patterns that create your life experiences, behind the core issues are your core beliefs. Core experiences or your life's experiences are the root chakra. Core patterns are the navel chakra. Your core issues are the solar plexus chakra. Your core beliefs are in your heart chakra. They're sitting there. They're believed by you. So when you say, dear Jesus, fix this experience. Dear God, dear Mother, to whomever you pray to, dear such and such, fix my experience. Spirit's going, your experience is coming from your beliefs. No, not just your thinking, like some popular notions out there. It's all about what you think. See, those are still thinkers. Deeper than your thinking is your beliefs. You're only going to think based on what you already believe in your heart. And the core beliefs ultimately are, I am or I am not a divine being. Now, that doesn't mean you sit around going, gosh, what a drag that I'm not a divine being. It's not like it's conscious. It's deep in the beliefs that we believe we're flawed. We believe that we're less than God created us to be. The beliefs then start creating thoughts, and the thoughts start creating emotions, and the emotions start creating experiences. This is a whole creation process. It's in the heart. Now, if the heart learns to say, like in the divine feminine prayer, instead of, no, I got it figured out, we learn to say, here I am. And we open our hearts and say, here I am. And we allow the divine presence that resides symbolically in our upper centers to pour down inside of us and fill our heart. Oh my God, new beliefs, love and peace and joy. And it pours into our thoughts. Theoretically, it could pour into our thoughts, then into our emotions and into our daily experiences. Our daily experiences can reflect people that are connected. That's why Jesus said, when you see me, you see the Father. What he meant in part is, I have no blocks within my being that would choose anything but being divine. Even amongst people that don't like me, I am still as God created me to be. And what a beautiful, powerful, and it is powerful. It's not all just kind of mellowy, passively as God created me to be. It's like, wow, this kicks butt. This is amazing. I dig this. It's passionate. Being in the zone, man, is passionate. So there's folks that struggle and they're trying to fix things at such a simple or external level and wonder, why is it that I'm working on this and it keeps coming back? Because you're still working on it on a symptomatic level. You're trying to do behavioral modifications. Even if you're trying to just fix something of the body, it's still like a behavioral modification. It's an external shift. But if it didn't go any deeper, if you've got an infection inside and all you do is keep wiping off the skin, you're still suffering. Oh no, it looks much better. But it isn't much better. So deeper. Let the healings go deeper. Whether that is accompanied by external sources, like a deeper cleaning of a wound, do that. But that's not the cleaning of the soul. And one of the greater problems is the more experiences we have coming from the hurts inside that we don't heal, and it starts downloading down to the root chakra, which manifests it physically. The more we have those kinds of things, boom, boom, happening in our lives, the more it starts to send more beliefs that we're flawed. So the downside of the external world is it's manufactured by our internal beliefs, but the more we do it and not shift it and heal it, the more it sends signals back to us that we have a terrible life. And it just adds more and more to our belief systems of hopelessness and despair. And that's why people get depressed. That's why they have chronic fatigue. That's why they have fibromyalgia. That's why they commit suicide, and so on and so on. Because the world gets to us. There's another way. But it means owning. First, it means owning the problem. If you don't even recognize that there's a problem, then how can anybody help you? How could God in itself help you if you go, I don't have any issues? It doesn't make sense. Deep in the core of our being is God. That cannot change. It will never change. God. Here's how we look now. God in the center of our being, which we can't even see much anymore. We say Namaste, but it's more like Nama, hope for the best, because people don't know how to see and believe in that anymore. So there's this core light in me, and it's in you. And when we say Namaste, it really is supposed to mean, even if I can't see my divinity, I know it's there and it's honoring the divinity in you, even if I can't see the divinity in you. It's just like it's overriding the ego patterns and propensities to lose faith. Namaste is kind of a great healing affirmation, not just a cool New Age thing to say, even though it's not coming from the New Age, it's rooted in Sanskrit. But core of my being, God. All of us. Wrapped around our bright, beautiful, divine self is a dark wrapping called the ego, where we said, okay, there's God, but what if we were separate from God? That moment, that thought created a wrapping around through which light cannot penetrate, out or in. So now we're enclosed, wrapped in this dark sheath called the ego. Then, because now when I look in the mirror, who am I? It's very dark, guys. The ego self seems very dark. It's everything that God isn't. Darkness, despair. So there's myself. Now that I feel so terrible that I am ego, I call it I am that I am, or I am not. It's the I am and the I am not. The good news is the I am not is nothing that I am. But I think I am. So there I seem to be. So here's the ego I am not now, every day. And when I look at you, I can pretend, I'm spiritual, I'm new. Every day we look at each other, we don't, ultimately, spiritually, you could say we could see the I am not, the dark ego, but nobody wants to live like that. It's too much. So we'll get to what ends up being visible to us is our masks, but not yet. The ego's there, and then because we're dark, the ego, we start to create from our beliefs dark experiences. And that's where our traumas come from. The God I am cannot be harmed in any way, nor does it cause harm. So it's that which I am not that harms you verbally, physically, etc., and how it's the part of you that harms me. The part of me that can seem harmed is not what I am, it's what I am not. It's the ego frail self. So all of a sudden the ego starts creating layers of trauma. This is what we're made up of. Somebody could say you're made up of tissue, organs, muscles. Okay, that's biology, anatomy. But actually, spiritually, what you're made up of, a bright, perfect light, wrapped around that is this dark sheath called the ego. It's very thin, has no real depth and substance, but just the thinnest layer of something can block out light and create a shadow. So that thin, silly ego thing is enough to make us not see ourselves, our true selves anymore. Then, what just happened? I don't know. I feel so dark now. So do you. So do I. So, oh my God, I feel terrible. And then we start harming each other out of pain because we think we're this darkness. I'm feeling so desperate and hurt. I don't like what I'm feeling, so I take it out on you. And you take it out on me. Now you don't just have the ego, you have layers of trauma. Does Is that making sense? But who wants to walk around going, hey, nice to meet you. I'm layers of trauma. Nice to meet you. I'm layers of trauma too. We're just all just totally wiped out, although some of us, that's how we look. We have to butter it up. On the outside of all the traumas are these coping mechanisms, fake selves. Aren't I pretty? Look at me, I'm a CEO. Look at me, I'm a great mom. All these titles or images. Sometimes it's visual whatevers, and sometimes it's intellectual, but they're all masks. Look at me, how wonderful. So now when we walk around, that's what we see. I see you, you see me, I look like this, you look like that, I'm achieving, you're achieving, I have money, you don't have money, we have more money tomorrow than today. You know, I've written a book, I've done this, all the achievements. Some of the achievements are clearly masks, but we also have things that aren't looking good as achievements. We also have the victim, I'm still sick, I'm sick again. We also wear dark masks, but they're still not as dark as the ego self and our wounds, because they're still masks trying to get sympathy, because I don't know how else to get it. If I have a sister, we're both, siblings, but this one's really pretty and I'm not, I have to find my way to get masks to get my interactions, because I can't seem to get them the same way you do. People manufacture false selves. So how do we heal? You cannot heal if you don't own that you wear masks. And you start peeling off the masks, and under that are the traumas. You can't heal if you don't work on the deep stuff, man, the traumas. Instead of, well, why would I do that? Look at me, I'm so well achieved. And I've met many people in all my years in counseling and worked with lots of people. The people of the most wealthy companies on the planet, and models and actors, actresses, and on and on and on. And it's all the same for everybody. I've seen them write books and ready to launch, and it's going to be a billion seller. I've seen them make movies, and this one's going to, and I can say to them, this isn't going to work. It's not going to happen. Well, what do you mean? And then they get mad at me, and then they start thinking I'm not a very good guide for them, or a teacher or a counselor, because I can see it. Especially if what they're doing is trying to present something better, like a healed self to the world, but they don't want to do the work about the inside. I'll say, ooh, you wrote a book about what it's like to come out and be a bright light to the world, but you still haven't worked on that issue. Well, I don't need to. That's in the past. Well, we'll see. And whatever they try to do, it tanks because they haven't worked on this stuff. So, guys, we cannot rise to the level of spirit if we don't own what's in our soul, the hurts in our soul. And we can't do that if you don't own the masks, and you don't own underneath the masks all the wounds. Now, I'm not saying you just set yourself on a 20-year dealing with wounds plan. This is just commit to, if something comes up, you're willing to work on it. I'm not saying just delve into it forever and obsess on it, but be willing to do something. Whatever happens, be willing to be with it, open it, look at it. Your path might be breath work, it might be something else, but do something, no longer, stuffing things. And how do I know if I have wounds? Well, one way to know is usually things show up and show you that. But they're sometimes a little more tactful, shielded, veiled. So you might see it as a pattern. Just look for a pattern. A pattern of betrayal, a pattern of abandonment, a pattern of feeling unlovable. I'm the one who keeps getting overlooked when they're giving out raises at work. Well, I don't understand. I'm not saying beat yourself up over it. You don't have to go, oh, that proves Michael, was saying it's a deep issue in the soul. Don't get all upset about it, but just see it. What kinds of things hurt you generally? What's the patterns? You tend to be angry when what? Now you'll start to see what's behind your anger. Because anger is not a core emotion. Anger is a reaction to core emotions. You usually have to feel hurt or distant some way before you're going to start feeling angry. So why was I able to get hurt, to get angry? What was it in me? Oh, now I'm starting to find my own low self-worth. So I thought I got angry the way you said such and such to me. Well, I was mad. Well, why were you mad? Because you said that. Well, why does that bother you? Because it's not very polite. That's all a front. What is it really about? Because when you said it, it hit me. Why? Because so-and-so used to say that to me. My ex used to say that. My dad used to, whomever, right? And you start getting to the roots in this lifetime of the event. But just because you talk about mom and dad or past lives or childhood issues doesn't mean you still have found the core yet, because other than lifetimes and people, it's still a belief system in the heart. See, if you didn't suspect it was true, if you didn't already have a vulnerability in here, you would not have believed it when they said something to you. You would not have reacted. You would have thought, wow, you poor thing. Because you wouldn't have believed it. When people diss you, it should sound as foreign as them telling you that your hair is the opposite color that it is. It's like, wow, that's what Jesus meant by forgive them, they know not what they do. He's saying these people that are doing what they're doing don't even know why. It's their own stuff inside. So if Jesus would have said, oh, you guys are so terrible, and you're all going to hell clearly for what you've done, it would have meant that what they were doing was real and what they were saying had true impact on him, and he was a victim, and he wasn't going to play that. That's partly what he meant by to Pilate. Nothing you can do to me is really by your calling. Anything you can say and do to me is only because it's been allowed. That's a very powerful thing when we can all shift our healing direction into a sort of a settling into a mindset of saying, nothing that anyone can ever say or do can happen and come my direction unless I have somehow allowed it. Now that starts to make you feel really gross if gross things have happened. You think, oh geez, then how could I have done that? It's not that you asked for the gross things. Just a little bit inside of unworthiness can create or draw the grossest things. Just a little bit of uncertainty inside can draw and attract the strangest things. Just a little bit. So when people say you created that, usually they don't even know what they're saying. They just read it in a book that also didn't know what it was saying, because it was written by an author who didn't know what they were saying, because it's pop spirituality. So they like to throw these things out. Well, you created it. It's like, geez, you're kidding me. It's not like you literally created that. Hey, I would like some of this when I'm 5. No, that's not what happened. But we come in with vulnerabilities, unhealed wounds, mainly on a core level, our beliefs about ourselves. And that is enough to attract stuff. I don't know if you remember being back in school, and there people that kind of had a little more self-doubt were the ones that got picked on a little more. People that seemed to have an air of confidence, people left them alone more. It's kind of like that, but it's times a million. Because it's deep, deep, deep inside, and on frequencies people cannot see or hear, but it's still there. People pick this stuff up. And just because you say, well, I'm tired of being traumatized. I'm tired of thinking about traumas. I'm tired of having had traumas. Here's the bad news. Being fed up with it will not heal it. Being fed up with it is actually just going to add to your tiredness. And if you get more tired, you will have less psychological and biological energy to even fight these things off. So don't just get fed up with it. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of talking about my ex. I'm past that. Doesn't mean it's done. You'll know it's done because these things get processed to a place of completion. It's hard to understand sometimes, but when we process these things properly, what starts to happen is you actually are shifting it a chunk at a time. And at some point you come to the place where you go, I don't feel the reactions anymore. But you're not faking it like some people who stuff it and go, I don't feel it at all. It's actually not there. And you're still not completed with your healing. You'll shift from I don't feel the reactions, it's not there, to you start to actually feel peace. Not just non-reactions, but you actually feel a positive feeling. And it'll come to the point on this planet where it's the opposite of everything I just described. Instead of coming in and then boom, 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 these things happening and weighing on us, and they become our patterns and our core issues, and they become our core beliefs, and then we start to live those core beliefs that create more patterns and experiences that are heavy and dark and negative. Instead of that, we start to uproot it, toss it, replace it with God's presence. New beliefs enter. Those new beliefs start to create different experiences. And having seen through it, having been here, you're actually going to have a stronger immunity than before. a stronger immunity. Now that you've been here and lived it, it's like, in a way, it's kind of like having a virus. And if you overly medicate it, you're killing your ability to fight it, right? It's better to let yourself build some immunity when healing so that you can handle these things in the future. If you just over antibiotic it synthetically, your body has no ability to deal with it. So that's what we're all learning here. We're learning to not just think we're spiritual, but to become and be spiritual. So things of this life and this world can't even touch us because it comes to us and finds nothing to connect to. There's no Velcro to stick to. We're just like, we got it, man. We're at peace. But healing does take courage. It does. It takes courage to be able to say, well, okay, here I am. And many people come to me and, well, I don't want to talk about this or that. But they somehow feel safe enough to say, well, I've never told anybody but. And if anybody's ever told you that, I've never told anybody but, you have been given such a sacred role in such a case. Because they're not just intellectually sharing data, information. They're exposing their soul, which means you're being given an opportunity to midwife them from wounded towards healing. Not to healing all the way, but towards it. And when this happens, major changes happen. Because the ego is not going to be okay with this. With you saying, it's time for me to heal. I'm going to bring the light to my stuff. The ego's not going to go, darn it. You heard about light. Okay, fine, I'll just give up. That's not the way this works. The ego's going to say, oh, really? Mm-hmm. So fine, go ahead. Let's go to a counselor. Let's go to a friend. Let's go to one of the Unity of Sedona chaplains, and they'll help us look at stuff and process, track our deepest stuff. What the ego's going to do is when you do that, I'm going to do something called age regression. As soon as you start thinking about wounds from the past, I'm going to have them hit you so hard you'll never want to go there again. And that's if you're using the improper or inadequate means of healing, you will be stuck in age regression. If you're not using proper soul level healing techniques, you will be dragged back to your past and almost re-traumatized. And I've seen that happen with many people. You're dealing with stuff you know not of. You're healers and terrain you don't know anything about. That's exactly what the ego wants you to believe. What God asks you to do is not be taken back to traumas so they can beat you up again, but rather bring the traumas to the now to be seen for what they are and are not, released, and now I'm empty. And that's what it means by you almost have no past. Wow, then who am I? Good question. Don't say, well, let me figure that out. No. It's I am wounded. I'm finally looking at that. I see my masks and my wounds. I'm seeing that. And whenever I do, bring them to the now and ask the Divine Mother to be with you, the Holy Spirit of God to be with you in any terminology you want, but call it something God or spiritual. Bring it to the now where you and God can see these things so they dissipate. Then be filled with the presence of God. You always replace what you empty out with something new, meaning something divine. And now I become a whole new person. Now I live in the present, which means the future is unlimited possibilities. I've worked on my lack and low self-esteem and so on. So all of a sudden, prosperity issues that have haunted me in the past, even people taking advantage of me financially. It's not just they took advantage. I have had unhealed low self-esteem. So those people see me coming from a mile away. Yes, their actions were not very nice. That's true. We're not saying they didn't do it. It's not very nice. But your question is not, why me anymore? It doesn't go that direction anymore. Now I get it. Well, of course it's me. Yeah, they saw me coming. I mean, my low self-worth, heck yeah. They sold me something for twice of what it was worth or whatever, the thing is, or they took advantage financially. I see my pattern. I'm willing to give it to God. I'm willing to say goodbye to it. And if I let the pattern in me go, the core belief situations in me, then I don't even send that frequency out anymore. So the past starts to dissipate in the now, in the present. And it's a very interesting thing the way time works. Because as long as we're still living with traumas from the past, and I'm not just saying dwelling on the past, because you may not think you're dwelling, but if you're carrying hurts and low self-worth or anything from the past, understand this. The way the brain works is on patterning. So if your past patterns are there, your brain can see almost nothing but that, which means your future is already up creek. You have no possibilities of anything different without uprooting the tapes that have been getting fed into the soul's projecting system. Got to change the tapes. But you got to be willing to look at them. That's why some people say, your life flashes before your eyes. That's in a way, and that does happen when people have near-death experiences or when they pass over. They see their life flash before their eyes. Seeing your life flash before your eyes is what's called Judgment Day. You see your stuff flash before your eyes. When you go, that's not good. When you see, I didn't know anybody was filming that one, that's the stuff that you'll be carrying with you to the next lifetime to have to work on. And the stuff that's like, wow, that was pretty cool that I did that. That's the stuff that creates heaven on the other side. The heaven and hell, it's created by our own consciousness. But why would you want to go to the other side carrying anything that you go, you mind if I go get some popcorn while you guys watch this scene? You don't need that. That's escaping. Just go ahead and be willing to look at it, and you don't have to die for it to happen. Be willing to talk your life passing before your eyes. Do it now. Let it flash before your eyes between you and God, between you and a counselor. And don't just bear it to God. I think that's the number one thing to do. But you can test how okay you are with them when you bring it to a human being. Whomever that is, a friend, a partner, just bring the stuff forward. Because what it means is this stuff has no power over me that I once gave it. I'll talk about this. I'll talk about that. It's kind of like saying soul retrieval is what we need to do. And I don't mean the kind of soul retrieval necessarily that some people have learned to do, because they took a one-day workshop and said they're shaman now, and they do what's called soul retrieval. Although that's at least some cool thing. I'm just using the generic term, not the technique that some people have sometimes falsified. But the real thing, real soul retrieval is a good soul level healing technique. The things I've written about in my Healing the Heart and Soul talk about soul level healing techniques that work. But using that concept as I'm coming to a close of soul retrieval as a term, not a technique, as a term, it means that I'm willing to look deeply inside of myself and see those chambers, caverns and chambers in soul retrieval work. I'm willing to go back and look at those. And it's really amazing. Whether it's visualization techniques you use to get there or shamanic techniques, as long as you're using healthy, authentic people, but it's about going back and looking at the chambers of regrets and wounds and patterning and looking at them for what they really are. But before you leave them, you tear up old contracts and rewrite new affirmations. The old gone, the new coming in. And that's when you're dealing with the underworld, which represents the past. But if I want to create a healthier life here, I also rise to another part, the upper realms, the upper worlds in shamanic work or in soul retrieval work. You go to the upper realms where you get to create for your future. Like you get to read the Akashic records and say, I'm ready to start creating a new life. But you can't do that without having done the subterranean work, because that's the subconscious stuff. So please understand, and let's not take for granted what healing is all about. Healing isn't about obsessing on wounds. So if anybody ever gave you that impression, including your own negative mind, toss it. Because that would have been somebody misleading you or misleading us. It's not about obsessing on the wounds. It's about standing in the center, in the light, saying, bring it on. It's okay. There's nothing that has power over the real me, of who I really am. Oh, but and when I say, it's not like it's always just some really cool, I'll sit in a chair and I'll have just a visualization. That's how it happens sometimes. Sometimes it manifests as people abusing you. They're actually embodying some of the process. You go to a counselor and say, well, I never talked about this, but I have some low self-worth. And they say, well, let's talk about it. And you talk about some yucky experiences. Oh, you cry, you scream, you vomit, whatever you need to do to get it out. Wow, I feel kind of cathartic. And if the counselor is good, they would say, now let's take some time to put something positive back inside where you opened it up. Good. So now, light and love, great. And you leave all, radiant, But you might find a ticket on your windshield when you get outside. Those police. They needed to meet their quota, don't they? They won't get paid. And I think before they even go out on the streets, I think they put them in a cage and poke at them to get them all irritated. That's not God. That's the thing you just worked on, becoming a demon mind, a demon thought, to come and attack you. So you can go, good one. Oh, I get it. I just healed low self-worth. It came out as a ticket. Okay, good one. Silly, just see it for what it is instead of getting all reactive, because then what happens is all the progress I just made in that room is tossed because it was just put to test. That's why the book of Job, which is only a metaphor, it's not an authentic, like a historic account, but that's why the book of Job, the story is the devil goes to heaven and says, hey God, people are only nice because you don't let me test them. Go let me put them to the test and I'll prove people cannot remain good. That metaphor, that story is depicted in what I just shared. In the counselor's office, not so bad, because they got lavender spritzing in the room, It's all just so nice, and they met you, and hi honey, how have you been this week? Namaste, and I empower you and I endorse you to become all that you're meant to be, and I empower you and encourage you. And it's like, wow, they love me. You go out and you find a ticket, and it's like, that's the test. Yes, you're being tested to do your work in the office, but man, you got to take it with you when you leave the office. You can come in here and be vulnerable and open. You can come in here and be loving and connected. That's very cool. But can you take it out there with you? You see what I'm saying? The world will try to put you to the test. The ego, the devil, anything you want to call it, will try to put you to the test to see, have you really become the thing you said you believe in? And if you can prove yes, then you have authentically taken and uprooted a major root to all kinds of things in your life. You've uprooted it, tossed it, and planted in something different. And that means you'll start to see miracles in your life. You start to see them emotionally, psychologically, personally, physically. Shifts start to happen. Now, lastly, remember that when people are doing their work, like if somebody's even in this room or watching today, it means to some degree you must have some amount of commitment to your work, right? So try to be a good symbol to them. You leave this place, you walk outside, and somebody starts moaning. It was too hot in the room, too cold in the room. Wow, tactfully, yeah, I didn't even notice the temperature because I was so wowed by that concept or what I learned, what we sang, what we heard, the prayer. Talk about light and positives. Don't let people pull you down. And I'm not just talking about you for your sake, for their sake, because they're fishing for something to go back and feed on that's negative so they can go back to the dark pattern, which would mean they've tossed everything they just heard or experienced. Try not to let them do that. I'm not saying control it, or insist that they don't. In your own loving, tactful way, try to bring them back to the surface so they can breathe again. Try to do what you can to not let people sink on your watch. And if they're in front of you, they're going through a test, but if they're in front of you, they're testing you. And you have to decide, how do you want to do with that test? And if they say blah, 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 and you go, I noticed that too, la, 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 and you both start feeding like piranha, on your soul, just eating off the soul. Not good. If you see you did it, walk away and go, dang, I see what happened. Don't call them and shame them over it. You just go here first to yourself. Wow, I saw what happened. You can go to a friend, a counselor, or whomever you just gossiped about even, if that were necessary, and say, I want to say something. I fed into something, and then I caught it. And I'm so grateful I caught it, but I want to own and make amends. I'm sorry that I fed into that at all. That person might say thank you. They might, and they have the right to say, I would like you to now go to the other person that you fed into it with and let them know you've seen the light. And it's right for them to ask you to do that. Do they need to bank on it, insist on it, force you? No. But they have the right to say, you're coming to me for amends. I have the right to say, here's something I would appreciate. Now, if it were me personally, I wouldn't do that for me alone, even if it were me at all. It would not be for me alone, if even at all. I would say, why don't you go do that for your sake? Because it's actually now getting you to work on the positives and give you something else instead of just owning the negatives. I would say, well, here's something you might go and do. And that's, for some reason, that's something a lot of people struggle with. If they even own making a mistake and apologizing, making amends is 90-something% of the time the part they won't do. If they even apologize. And most people won't even do that when they've made mistakes. So that's all hypocrisy. If you call yourself spiritual and you don't know humility, you don't know how to say oops. I'm not saying somebody has to cook you over it. I'm just saying learning to go, oops, God, my bad. Just, it's okay. Can you go the next step? Is there something I can do to make up for that? If indeed there is something, right? So that to me is kind of a bit of an overview of what healing is all about, and I pray it made sense. Let's take a moment for some internal work on this. I'm going to share a prayer and a decree. A decree is a powerful form of prayer, so we're not going into a visualization per se. We're going to go into a healing. But a decree, a powerful prayer of healing, focusing on our soul, but also on our emotional self. Eyes closed and dropping into our center. And we say to you, Father, Mother, God, there's so much here that we've heard today that makes sense. Parts that don't, parts that we don't agree with, it's cool. Just let them go. It's okay. We can let that just pass. Whatever we did here of any value, whatever we felt of any value, whatever we learned, let's breathe it in. This isn't what you heard from some guy. Breathe it in, whatever you can breathe in, whatever you liked. Breathe it in and let it become yours. Your insights, your reality, your beliefs, your truth. Not what I heard, it's what I know. Anything that really resonated and made sense, it's what I know. And from this confident place, I say to you, Father, Mother, God, all that I have been that seems unlike your holiness that you created me to be, in this moment, I recognize it. It manifests in so many forms. Dysfunctionality, financially, emotionally, romantically, health issues and all that. None of that's God's will. I bring this all to the altar now. And I put this on the altar and own I have invested in these things at times. I've caused other people to invest in misbeliefs such as this. But you, Father, Mother, God, have nothing to do with this stuff. You are and remain the consciousness of heaven. You are holy to us all. You're the holiness we seek. And we affirm that your kingdom comes and your will is done in us, as us, just as it is in heaven. And in doing so, we become heaven. Not a place, but a consciousness, and we're part of that consciousness. Now that we are centered in heaven, we can affirm our daily bread. We affirm our ability to forgive others who have seemingly trespassed against us. Their issues and attacks have no place in us, cannot touch or at all scratch the surface of our holiness. I joyously surrender all ego experiences of separation and trauma and I allow my emotions to be filled with the peace and happiness of God. I joyously surrender my ego belief that I'm separate from God. I choose to look at this lie with no fear, no sense of shame or guilt, and no denial of my part in creating this belief. As I heal my misperceptions about being separate from God, God's love and light confirm their presence by speaking to me through my intuition, imagination, and creative impulses. I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. I joyously surrender the ego beliefs that God blames and judges me for the decisions I have made. I'm responsible for creating my ego and for judging myself for doing so. Therefore, I choose to forgive myself for these ego decisions and accept the truth of who I am and what I deserve. God is but love, and therefore so am I. I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. I joyously surrender my ego belief that due to the errors of my choices and actions, I am not worthy to enter God's kingdom. By learning from my mistakes and surrendering, I am released from my past. Therefore, I accept my rightful place as a co-creator with God. I am here to multiply my light and let my I am presence take dominion over the earth. Today I choose the life that forgiveness offers, wherein I am free from the judgments that would reject a life of miracles. I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. And I joyously surrender my ego belief that to return to heaven or God or to perform miracles, I need to be perfect. I accept the truth that God does not look for human perfection, as does the ego, even though it will look and never find, but instead looks for the purity of heart. God does. It's not those who are perfect who see God, but instead it's those who are in pureness in their heart who see God. Therefore, I surrender all impurities in my heart. Let me remember I am one with God. I am as God created me. I will to be the Christ on earth. In the name of our Father, Mother God, and its holy child, the Christ, which is our true identity, and the Holy Spirit, I accept I am one with my I am presence, and that through that oneness I am sealed from all ego illusions and the appearances they project onto the screen of life. Today I am one with God and with my brothers and sisters and my true self. My emotions, desires, my heart, my soul is part of God's and the fullness thereof. My soul is part of God and the fullness thereof. My soul is a part of God and the fullness thereof. Just tune into that for just a moment. My soul, which commands all the rest. You don't have to worry right now about body and experiences and ailments and issues and health and vitality and emotions, because if my soul is one with God, I experience the fullness thereof, and all the rest is taken care of. As long as we're willing to put on the altar the things that stand in the way of my soul, feeling the fullness, the connection to God, then we have the right to affirm that this is so. Hold that thought for just a moment. I bring to the altar my shames and inadequacies, my low self-worth, silly stuff. I don't even have to fix it. Just own it and put it on the altar. Even my trying to fix it of my own self, on my own accord or my own techniques, are a disguised arrogance of the ego because it knows it won't work. And it'll lead me just back to doing this again and again, so I feel deflated yet again. So I need do nothing but a little willingness. I recognize I have misdirected my life through my beliefs. I was mistaken about myself and others. I put this on the altar. It rises to the heavens to be dispersed. Holiness remains. Holiness pours down upon me. Pure, perfect, holy light. And it fills my heart with joy, with anticipation, knowingness of a new life. And I do this every day, at least this part of just welcoming in the presence of God. Let it fill my heart on every inhale and let it wash over me on every exhale. so that I and my Father are one and the same. And so it is. And very slowly, reintegrate back to the room. Very slowly, gradually stretch out. But just reintegrate to the room. Thanks. Good. I pray this has all made good sense and that you felt, allowed yourself to experience something.